Hello, fellow fans. I'm Mark. United with me is my co-host, the marvelous Mr. Bryan. What up, Bryan?
Hey, everyone.
Welcome, everyone, to UWF on the Chip and Company Podcast Network. On the last episode, Bryan and I went back to the 80s to pick our favorite year of 80s cinema. Was it easy? No, but no one ever said Bryan and I were easy. So it's okay. Check it out. Fans of the 80s, fans of the cinema. On this week's episode, Bryan and I go to a galaxy far, far away to unite with more Jedi Master friends out there to talk about Ahsoka and Star Wars Rebels. May the Force be with you as United We Fan starts now.
All right, let's do this one last time.
Truth is, I am Iron Man.
Football is life.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
X never, ever marks the spot.
Is Star Wars the one with the little wizard boy?
This is the way.
Avengers!
Assemble.
Ah, chills. Literal chills.
Welcome back, everyone, to United We Fan, the podcast on the Chip and Company Podcast Network. Bryan will shortly introduce our special guest host for this episode. But first, we're going to take a trip to Disney Corner. Bryan introduced our guests, and for the Disney Corner, we're going to find out their origin story when it comes to Star Wars. When did you fall in love with Star Wars? What made the Force strong with you? And if you could, rank the 3 Disney rides when it comes to Star Wars. Take it away, Bryan.
Those 3 Disney rides, of course, being Star Tours, Rise of the Resistance, and Smuggler's Run. First, we welcome back to the show for his 3rd time in the last couple of months, Marc Valentine from Diz Life Podcast. Marc, welcome back to the show. What is your Star Wars origin story, my friend?
Hey guys, you getting tired of me yet?
Maybe just a little bit.
Never.
I remember my biggest Star Wars memory was, of course, sitting on my living room eating lima beans, watching the Star Wars movies that I recorded off of HBO endlessly. But I used to make my Star Wars toys wrestle, they had their own league and stuff. And I think Luke Skywalker was the Intercontinental Champion of
the people's elbow.
Yeah. So those are my Star Wars memories as a kid. It was the 80s. It was crazy.
Mike Ruby, also part of Babu's Frikin podcast, which, gentlemen, we need to come back at some point, even in a limited capacity. I miss talking Star Wars with the two of you guys. Mike, welcome to the show.
Great to be back. I've missed this a lot. Thanks for having me.
Mike, let's go ahead and have you rate those 3 Star Wars rides Mark was talking about. So Rise of the Resistance, Star Tours, and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run. I believe you've only had the chance to experience those on the West Coast, correct?
That's correct. I've had those as Disneyland experiences, and I would rank them in the exact order that you just played them back. Rise of the Resistance is by far the best ride ever. Star Tours, and having just been back, I gotta say Star Tours is above Smuggler's Run. Unless you're flying the Falcon, Smuggler's Run is a bit of a disappointment. So my first time there, I flew it with my 7-year-old daughter. That was super fun. My second time, I played Gunner, and when I realized that I could just hold the button down and it would keep blasting, it kind of became a little lame skis. So I'm gonna put that underneath Star Tours, where at least you get to see a whole bunch of different places. It always feels like something new. And to Mark's point a minute ago, because I think my Star Wars origin story is similar. I don't remember a time in my life without Star Wars. Luke Skywalker was the president of my wrestling federation, not the IC champ.
Yes, I'm not the only one that did that.
He's the Vince McMahon.
Oh yeah, no. Actually, I had a Voltron figure was my Vince McMahon, and Spock was the referee.
So, we just had weight classes. The G.I. Joes were in the same weight class as the Star Wars toys, but the He-Man toys were the heavyweights, so they couldn't wrestle the little guys.
I think you guys are just lucky that Kersantin didn't have an action figure back then, because that dude would have been the intergalactic champion for sure.
I think I'm going to have to revive something like that. I'm going to have the Funko Wrestling League here now, so I'm going to use my Funko Pops.
I like it. Well, Mike, if I add in Hyperspace Mountain, where does that fall on your hierarchy of rides? Does that beat Star Tours? Because it's second for me.
It does beat Star Tours.
Yep.
Hyperspace Mountain beats Star Tours. There is nothing better than the trench run music playing when you get blasted off going into Space Mountain.
Nothing better except for Rise of the Resistance.
Except for Rise of the Resistance, but it makes a big difference when you have the Hyperspace Mountain theme as opposed to just the standard Space Mountain theme, which is great ride, don't get me wrong, but it's, pun intended, light years better.
My 4 are the same, Hyperspace Mountain above Star Tours. I think I'd probably put Smuggler's Run above Star Tours. Mark, you didn't rank yours, and then we'll go back to Mark Adams, who has not ridden Hyperspace Mountain. No offense, Mark.
Rise, yeah. So Rise decidedly won. The Smuggler's Run is number 2 only if I pilot. So I agree with Mike. If not, then it's interchangeable with Star Tours. It's basically Star Tours if you're not, and I'll take Star Tours because at least I know who's driving with that thing. So, but yeah, so Rise, Smugglers, Star Tours, Hyperspace Mountain on the West Coast, which I have done, is number 2 by a lot.
They need to release the other 3 missions of Smuggler's Run to get people back to that attraction. 3 other, when it was originally testing with cast members in California, it had 4 missions. They've been stuck on Corellia for 5 years now, 4.5 years now. They need to introduce the other missions, not just Corellia. Wow. Mark Adams.
My Star Wars story starts with the VHS release of the original trilogy. I remember wearing those out. Big fan of them. Actually, oh my God, saying that out loud, I think the Ewok Adventures might have been in my introduction to Star Wars. So Ewok Adventures for the win. Ranking the rides, I'm going to do Rise, then Star Tours, then Smuggler's Run. If I'm pilot, I agree. It's like The Force Awakens. It's a great time, having so much fun. But if I have to be gunner, it's kind of like The Last Jedi, where at first you're really excited, but then it's just a mess full of disappointment.
I'm gonna mute you, just FYI.
Why? Oh, it's not like I said that it's like engineers like The Rise of Skywalker or anything. We're just
that might be true.
Oh. Rise, without a doubt. Do we have a favorite combination for Star Tours?
Anything Darth
really
Vader.
Like
I like the pod racing. I also like going to the seismic charge when Boba Fett tries to capture you with Darth Vader, and that's really only to tee this up. Anyway. Oh, I didn't tip my introduction to Star Wars. I think you guys are going to get mad at me. I think my introduction to Star Wars was the 1997 re-release special editions.
I can't be mad at it.
I don't hate them. Am I a bad guy? I don't hate them.
Han shot first.
Oh my God.
So we are welcoming in Mike and Marc. Again, thank you so much for joining us. We are previewing the newest Disney Plus series coming, Ahsoka, or Star Wars Rebels Season 5, whichever you would prefer to call it. So let's get into talking about who the character of Ahsoka is. Let's start with Mike. Mike, not only who is Ahsoka, we can define that as she was Anakin's Padawan. Anakin was a master, not a master. It's unfair. It's all that kind of stuff. But ultimately,
it's outrageous.
How can you do this? This is outrageous. It's unfair. How can you be on the council and not be a master?
Anakin was a Jedi Master to Ahsoka. We got a spoiler alert. We got a trailer today with Anakin voiceover. Ooh, man, I'm so in on Hayden Christensen being a part of this show. We'll talk about that part later. But Ahsoka left the Jedi Order because she was accused of doing something that she ended up not doing. She left the Jedi Order. She then found out what the Jedi truly mean to people. She kind of came back, never officially came back. But Mike, that's who Ahsoka is, but who is Ahsoka to you? What does she mean to you? Do you have an affinity for this character? She is legitimately my favorite Star Wars character of all time.
That's a high bar there. I would not go that far in terms of my bar for Ahsoka. I think she's a really interesting character who has grown on me over time, probably the way that she has with a number of people in the Star Wars universe. When she debuted in the first Clone Wars movie, she was considered to be a great annoyance, probably like a 2 or 3 on the Jar Jar scale of 10 of annoyance. But over time, she's become really interesting because it's been the first person who we've been able to see actually grow and mature from being a Padawan all the way through becoming a Jedi. And she's not a Skywalker in that regard. Like she's of the Skywalker saga, but she isn't in the Skywalker saga, which is a really interesting vector point in. I think she's great because she's also she's kind of the connective tissue between the prequels and the originals, and now she's becoming the connective tissue again between the originals and the sequels. So I think she plays a really interesting role in that. I like that she's got a little bit of attitude. She's both a traditionalist as well as, sorry for the pun, a bit of a rebel, the way that her master Anakin was. And I think what's going to be fun about this series is getting to see a little bit more about who she actually is. I think we understand from her time in both of the animated series that she's been in that she has a strong moral compass and she seems to understand nuance a bit more. But I don't know through any of those series whether we've ever really gotten to the heart of what does Ahsoka really want? What is she really after in this life? She's, she hasn't had attachments because she wasn't allowed to have them. And so we never really seen what does she want to be doing? So I'm excited to see what happens when she's actually given a much more sustained focus and arc as opposed to being a piece of the larger narrative.
Mark Adams, I want to go to you on this. Ahsoka is a fairly new character for you. The first time you ever even saw her, I believe, was probably her live action appearance in the season 2 of The Mandalorian. You've gone back. Have you watched the Clone Wars? I think the answer to that is no, but you did watch Rebels recently.
My introduction to Ahsoka is a weird one. I have seen Clone Wars. I saw the movie first, and that was my introduction to her. It was not a great introduction to her. It was not meant to be her introduction. The show, I liked her a lot in Clone Wars. So then seeing her in live action, it took me a second because it felt like a different Ahsoka. Mandalorian, though, as she went on, it definitely grew on me more and more. Love you, Rosario Dawson. But I think her character is great. Once I got past the movie, she wasn't annoying. I thought it was a very strong, interesting character with a lot of depth to it.
The movie doesn't fit in timeline wise first, but it did come first. So you were introduced at the right time.
Oh man, she was almost kid Anakin annoying.
Well, she was 13, so I mean she was pretty comparable there. So that's fair. Mark, how about you?
I mean, so growing up, for anyone who grew up in Mike and my age group, it's Luke Skywalker was always our number one. And what I would say is probably Ahsoka now has achieved maybe a 1A status. And I think a lot of that is by and large because of 4 episodes that I think is peak Star Wars. And that would be season 7's episodes 9 through 12 of the Clone Wars. It was Old Friends Not Forgotten, Phantom Apprentice, Shattered, and then Victory and Death. Those 4 episodes, I think, are the best Star Wars that I think we've ever gotten.
The Siege of Mandalore is what you'd call those 4, yeah.
It's incredible storytelling, but it's so emotional. Those final shots with her, and you can see the helmets, and even Vader finding her lightsaber. That to me is peak Star Wars. And of course, now we get new life breathed into the character with her appearing on The Mandalorian. But I love the fact that she's conflicted. She's not quite a Jedi. I like that she's a rebel, and she doesn't really buy into the tenets of the Jedi wholeheartedly. She questions everything. She's been on the wrong end of some of those philosophical decisions. So, and I love Rosario Dawson. I think Rosario Dawson was the perfect casting choice. Although I have to say, I do love Rosario Dawson, but please don't at me, people. It will forever and always be Ashley Eckstein to me. And she has a place in my heart. So
Piano Rob will agree with you.
Yes.
I also agree. I absolutely agree. So we deal with Ahsoka. So we see the Siege of Mandalore. I agree with Mark. Some of the top level storytelling we've ever gotten in Star Wars because we literally watched this character grow up to reach the point that she got to. She was scorned. She didn't ever officially come back, which is very abnormal for how these hero journeys typically go. But a lot of what we're going to be dealing with in Ahsoka spins directly off of what her role was with the Rebels crew, the Star Wars Rebels crew, 77 episodes, 4 seasons. Mark Adams, you just finished that show. If I had to ask you did Ahsoka improve throughout Rebels for you? Now, she was only in the kind of the end of the first season. She was revealed to be Fulcrum, which was kind of their Empire informant. And then she was in throughout season 2. She helps Kanan, who was a Jedi, and his Padawan Ezra, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. But Mark, would you say the character of Ahsoka improved because of the show Rebels for you?
I don't know about improved. I left with a really good taste in my mouth after The Mandalorian, so she was already pretty high for me. I don't think she was a top 5 highlight for me from the show, but I was really happy to see her.
Fair enough. Mike, how about you? Ahsoka's entire role and presence within Star Wars Rebels, is that show even near the level where does Rebels fit with you? Do you like it better than the Clone Wars? Do you prefer it less than the Clone Wars? And do you think it would have been a lesser show without her?
I like Rebels quite a lot. I think that, I don't know whether I would say it's better or worse than Clone Wars. I think they both have episodes that don't particularly feel compelling, and both of them have episodes that I think are outstanding top 5 Star Wars moments. I mean, I think the episodes where she is re-engaging with Vader and realizing who he is, and the episode where she ends up dueling with him again and we think we may have lost her, it's awesome. It's super, super cool, and it's mirrored in the Obi-Wan series when he's fighting against him and they both split his mask in their individual duels. Like there's just great stuff there. So I think she was a welcome addition to Rebels. Do I think they needed her? No. Do I think they needed Darth Vader in Rebels? No. But I love that they had them, and it was super fun, and it allowed us to start telling some of these stories that are now going to be reemerging in Ahsoka, because without those stories there to connect her to the Rebels, not just to connect her to the Rebels crew, but to begin to connect her with some of the Star Wars lore, some of the Jedi lore, some of these things that are going to be explored in the upcoming series, we never would have gotten that if she hadn't appeared in Rebels.
Mark Valentine, go ahead.
Well, the cameos are fun, but Rebels is not about Ahsoka, nor is it about, when Obi-Wan makes a cameo. It's the injection of those Skywalker saga characters that make it fun. But like, that show is about Ezra, it's about Sabine, it's about Hera and Chopper, it's about Kanan Jarrus, and Zeb. It's nice to have all of this. We've used the term now, connective tissue. So having a character like Ahsoka that spans generations from the Clone Wars all the way to the Mandalorian, it's fun because it gives this universe that much more depth. But did we need her in Rebels? No. Was she a welcome addition? Absolutely. To me, again, and I'm going to repeat this because I feel like it bears repeating, the best Ahsoka that we got was in season 7 of the Clone Wars. That was her show. That was the end of her arc. And I'm excited to see them kind of open this book again now in live action, because we really haven't gotten much in The Mandalorian. We've only gotten, again, cameos from her. So it's going to be really neat to see her, going mano a mano with Grand Admiral Thrawn. I can't wait.
We will talk about Thrawn here in just a minute. And Mike, you brought up Obi-Wan and splitting the mask and everything else. Like, if you go back through the archives of Babu's Frikin podcast, those were my 2 biggest complaints. Is anything that seemed to be of consequence in Obi-Wan was either pulled directly from Jedi Fallen Order, the video game, or pulled better from Rebels. And each of those properties did it better than Obi-Wan did, in my opinion. But alas, that's not what this podcast is about. Before we talk about the Rebels crew, let's hear from our sponsors.
Hey guys, Dislife Mark here, and I want to tell you all about the official travel partner here at Chip & Company. Let our good friend Sarah at Destination to Travel help you plan your next Disney vacation. Sarah specializes in planning dream vacations for your family. She's an authorized Disney vacation planner, and she can help with every step of your magical vacation. The best thing is that her services are 100% free. Want to travel beyond Disney? Sarah has you covered there too. Want to find out more? Fill out a trip request form over at the website at Chip & Co. or email her directly at sarahsolberg@d2travel.com. Start planning that dream vacation today. Email her at sarahsolberg@d2travel.com.
But let's talk about that Rebels crew. They're prominently featured throughout every trailer that we've gotten for Ahsoka. None more so than the character of Sabine Wren, who is a Mandalorian. Clan Wren. She held the Darksaber for several episodes before eventually just handing it off to Bo-Katan, which is why everybody was complaining about Dave Filoni forgetting the rules of the Darksaber when they thought they outsmarted Dave Filoni for some reason. Don't try to do that. Dave Filoni is the showrunner for this show. Mark Adams, go ahead.
For all of our listeners at home, if you are not a Star Wars expert, it's okay. I'm here for you. I am also not a Jedi Master Sith Lord. Brian, I did have a question. It took me a second when the Darksaber came up because I'd watched Mandalorian. So I was like, oh, Darksaber, cool. And I saw Bo-Katan, like she really wanted it. Okay, so this show takes place
5 years before episode 4, A New Hope.
Okay, because she looked surprised, so I guess she just never saw it again for 5 years until Mando showed up with it. Is that where we're getting?
Who, Bo-Katan?
Yeah.
So we're looking at 10 to 15 years have passed, but from Rebels until the time frame of the Mandalorian. Yeah, at least 15 years, right? So, I mean, Bo-Katan, long story short, she was handed the Darksaber by Ahsoka during the Siege of Mandalore. She lost it at some point. Darth Maul had it. Then Bo-Katan had it. Then it got lost. Sabine got it, who then gave it back to Bo-Katan. So Bo-Katan lost it on 2 occasions when it was simply handed to her to be the ruler of Mandalore. Then in The Mandalorian, we're dealing with Ahsoka, or with Bo-Katan, who has to win it basically by ritual, by combat, because it's been handed to her 2 previous times and she kept losing it. She didn't have the respect of her people.
All right. Thank you.
Mike, Mark, would you say I answered that properly?
When will then be now?
Soon.
You're in now.
So Sabine Wren, she's told by Ezra at the end. So let's recap the end of Rebels. So if you're watching Rebels, here we go. There are going to be spoilers for the show Star Wars Rebels from here on out. The show ends with Ezra basically taking off to hyperspace in a Star Destroyer with Grand Admiral Thrawn by Purrgil. The reason we all freaked out when we saw those giant space whales in The Mandalorian while Grogu and Mando were flying through hyperspace, because we could see those Purrgil. They are the only thing that can travel by hyperspace that we know of that's an animal. So Mike, I'm going to come to you. Ezra told Sabine she's counting on him. What does that mean? It seems like, or that he's counting on her. It seems like Sabine is the next choice to be Ahsoka's Padawan.
That's what the trailers would lead us to believe. That's not how I interpreted Ezra's line. I interpret it as, find me. That, it's at some point, he's hoping that she will help to bring him back from wherever he's disappearing to. But from what they've intimated in the trailers and the thought that she is somehow becoming an apprentice to Ahsoka, I think is really exciting.
Natasha Liu Bordizzo is who's going to portray Sabine in live action. Mark, go ahead. Do you have anything on Sabine here?
No, I mean, the casting looks amazing. We spent a little time on Babu's Frikin podcast, kind of kicking it around our dream casting of who we thought. So, Natasha Liu Bordizzo looks the part. I kind of freaked out, screamed internally when, I saw the purple hair. She's a great character. She's one of the best characters to come out of Rebels. Her backstory is great. The fact that she's kind of this disgraced Mandalorian is pretty wonderful. I loved the footage that we get from the trailer, seeing her with a lightsaber. It's not the first time that we've seen her with a lightsaber. She does, handle the Darksaber for a while, and she does train with Kanan. And, he does teach her a little bit of how to use that sophisticated weapon. It looks like she's going to be doing battle with that acolyte that we see, that we don't really know her name yet, but I think she's gonna be a good character. Here's my hope, guys, and I want to say this. I truly hope we're not just bringing these characters into live action to use them once. and give them like a small cameo and then either have them disappear or kill them off. Yeah, I'm talking
Mark,
about.
do you have Marvel on your mind when you say that?
Yeah, no, I have Cad Bane on the brain because we waited forever to get a live action Cad Bane. We finally get him. It was an amazing sequence, and he's dead.
If that's not the quack to calling the stifling slimy.
So please don't do that to these characters. Please, please, please. Keep them around for a while. I need them. I love them.
That's totally fair. So they're out searching for Ezra. It seems like, obviously, we've learned throughout Mandalorian and stuff like that Grand Admiral Thrawn is back, and we're going to talk about Grand Admiral Thrawn in just a minute, but Ezra and he disappeared. It seems like not only are they searching for Thrawn, but they're also still searching for Ezra. Mark, what was your impressions of Ezra your first time through Rebels that you just finished at Mark Adams?
I think the characters were, I know it's going to sound like cliche characterization, but I think they were all great for a new generation of trying to capture a new viewer for Star Wars. The characters' backstories were all good. I wasn't annoyed by any of them. I don't feel like their character development was shortchanged like some of the movies did. I didn't feel like story arcs were started and then kind of led to nowhere. I think everything played very well. I need to go back and watch the previews for Ahsoka now that I have a better understanding of these characters. I think I'll appreciate it a lot more.
Yeah. Does anybody have anything like I think Kanan Jarrus is one of my top 5 favorite Jedi. I think he's really interesting. He's got a lot. He's voiced by Freddie Prinze Jr. Spoiler alert, he's dead now. But I mean, he's not like a full-blown Jedi.
The character, not Freddie Prinze Jr.
Correct. He does have a son, so we can potentially live on through Kanan's legacy through his son Jason, aka Spectre 7. But I think Kanan was good. I think Ezra was really good as well. Really compelling villains, and the way they work in the Emperor Palpatine and stuff throughout that final season of Rebels is also really interesting. I think Ezra is a really nuanced Jedi. He could be kind of our first, maybe not like a full-blown gray Jedi, but he definitely seems to have an understanding of kind of both sides of the world. Mark Valentine, anything there on Ezra?
I mean, I understood what Ezra was at the beginning of Rebels. It was like Mark just said, it was to bring a new generation of kids to like the Star Wars universe, but he grew, and I loved. By season 3, I absolutely fell in love with Ezra. Once he really started to embrace his power, and you could see him, truly mature into a Jedi Knight and a Padawan. Like, to me, that was the best that we got. He was a little bit brooding in season 4, but it's understandable as to why. Again, his master dies. The last few episodes, Ezra was a little bit of a wet rag, but let's get him back into the mix. Get a lightsaber in that guy's hand. Again, to speak to the casting, Amon Esfani looks the part. Like the casting's spot on. Dave Filoni killed it with this cast. So I can't wait to see what this guy does.
Mike, do you prefer Kanan Jarrus or Ezra Bridger?
Kanan Jarrus, by far. I think, and this is not a knock, but I think Ezra as a character is a high-level graduate of the Luke Skywalker school of Tashi Station whining.
Yes.
Like I find Ezra. I'm gonna agree to disagree with Mark on Ezra in the first 2 seasons. I find him almost intolerable. I had a really hard time watching the early seasons because he is so whiny and complainy, even when he's trying to do the right thing.
I did say by season 3, he really like.
No, other Mark.
Oh, okay.
I don't get it. I'm the first one to call out an annoying like younger character. And I told Bryan this season 4 is actually my least enjoyed episode, I think, because he is such a wet blanket. But just real quick, is anyone else a little sad that we're not going to get live action Freddie Prinze Jr. as, well, we might.
Well,
okay.
We'll come back to that. We'll come back because that's on a wish list.
You never know. But I like Kanan. I think Kanan is a complex character. I like the fact that he's trying to be a good Jedi and a good master, but by the same token, he's living with the guilt of running and leaving his own master to die.
which
So
we
in some
which we
ways, he
see
doesn't
at the
feel-
beginning in the first episode of the Bad
Bad
Batch.
Batch. Yeah. So I mean, so on the one hand, he's trying to be really good at this thing, but he almost doesn't feel worthy of the Order anymore, and they have to do it really quietly because they're being hunted by the Empire. So and then he's blind. He's blinded when in fighting Darth Maul, and so there's an entire thing where it's like Neo in the last Matrix, where he's kind of seeing through the Force. So I think there's a lot of really interesting stuff about Kanan where I just find him to be a more compelling character, and Ezra by the end grows on me with what he wants to do. I mean, he's very. We'll see where he is now, but he's so pure of heart and earnest through the early seasons that it's just a little hard. It was a little hard as an adult for me to get behind in the same way as some of the other characters. But I don't think he's necessarily bad. But if you say like, who would I rather see on screen? Like, I'll take a Kanan scene over an Ezra scene any day. And it's sad that you mentioned Hera's son Jason. That's her son with Kanan, and so it's going to be very sad that we not only have the crew of the Ghost without him, but she's also raising his son without him.
Yeah, and you kind of took that when he gets blinded by Maul in the final episode of season 2, like for the next season, like that's just Dave Filoni showing off like all the different things and kind of teaching the fan base what the Force can do, with whether it be through the Bendu or whether it be through like you said, seeing through the Force, or all these different things that Kanan can do because of the Force and the way he trains and the way he kind of has that retrospective on life. It's really interesting to me. So let's move on to his significant other. Go ahead, Mark.
I was going to say, is it really hard to believe that though? I mean, what the Force is, it's connected. It's foresight. So I bought into that wholly. Like I never had a problem with him seeing through the Force. I kind of dug.
Oh no, I don't disagree at all.
Does it? Chirrut in Rogue One does it.
He does.
He's not even a Jedi. He doesn't even have a lightsaber. He's just got a badass stick. And that dude, that he's dodging blaster fire and taking down the Empire.
He's one with the Force.
You cannot, and the Force is
with him.
You cannot convince me Dave Filoni does anything wrong in life, so I will totally admit that I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. We'll move on to Kanan's other half, his better half, played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead here, and the live action is playing Hera. Trivia question: who is Mary Elizabeth Winstead married to?
Ooh, I know.
Go ahead.
Ewan McGregor. Hello there.
Yes. So I think that's awesome. We now have Ewan McGregor's wife in there. Hera Syndulla. She does have a cameo or a name cameo in Rogue One. Her droid Chopper. Mark, I will give you a chance to wax poetic on Chopper here in just a minute. But Hera she's the best pilot in the galaxy. She's a general in the rebellion. She is high level as they come when it comes to her skills and her tactics. The character of Hera and her droid Chopper. Mark Adams, go ahead on Chopper.
Chopper is my new favorite Star Wars droid. I definitely think several times he said WTF without saying WTF. He made every scene just better for me. I love Chopper. He's a popular droid amongst the fan, right? Or am I like?
Oh no, Chop's a fan favorite.
Yes.
Okay, good. Yep. Sorry, R2, BB-8, all you other friends out there, but Chopper is my favorite right away.
Mike, Chopper and Hera, anything you hope to see?
I'm excited for getting real life Chopper. I mean, I think a lot of what made Chopper interesting in the animated series was that he had appendages and he had quirks and things that they could make work because he was animated. And so the idea that now they're actually going to have a physicalization of him that does something other than roll by on screen in Rogue One, to your point about the cameos, I'm excited to see how they actually manifest the character. I've never really been a huge Hera fan. I always felt like she was a little one-dimensional, except in her interrelationship with Kanan. So I'm excited to see what happens when they give her a little bit more to dig into. I really like Mary Elizabeth Winstead a whole heck of a lot. She is forever Ramona Flowers, but I'm excited for what she does here. So I'm curious to see how this plays through. I don't have any specific expectations other than I'm like Mark. I'm excited about the comic relief that Chopper's going to bring to every scene he's in.
Mark Valentine.
Yeah, I mean, you guys already said it. Like, bring me Chop. I'm excited. Again, I said this earlier. I'm excited for the entire crew. To get a live action version of Rebels has been something that I thought I would only ever dream of. And the fact that I only have 11 days and then it's going to become a reality is just internally screaming, can be the only way I can describe it.
Filling out the rest of the crew, we have Captain Rex, who was in Clone Wars. He was in Rebels. We very much believe Rex to come back. As I don't think it's officially confirmed, but you would get Tamora Morrison to play Captain Rex. Zeb Aurelios, the only reason you drop him into season 3 of The Mandalorian, and why Mike and Mark Valentine and I were geeking out at the exact existence of Zeb Aurelios. He's going to be in this show. He has to be. I hope Agent Callus, who has a really, really fun story arc, in my opinion, turning from Empire to Rebel throughout Rebels. I hope Callus is in this show too. But there's so many different potential ways they can go. I just need them to confirm that the bald bearded man in Return of the Jedi is Rex officially.
I just would like to comment and interject. I think General Hux did it better.
Agree to disagree.
General Hux did nothing better.
No. Agree. He didn't even turn rebel. He just hated a guy. That's all he did.
I don't want you to win. I just need him to lose.
The second Ahsoka dropped this name in season 2, episode 5 of The Mandalorian, she's out looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn. Mike, before we talk about who Grand Admiral Thrawn is in this new canonical world of Star Wars, there's a book series, 3 parts, Heir to the Empire. It's now considered Legends. Mike, who is Grand Admiral Thrawn before we actually talk about who he is now?
Sure. So there's a series of 3 books that were written. Grammar helps. There's a series of 3 books that were written by Timothy Zahn in the early 90s. And they're affectionately called the Thrawn trilogy or the Heir to the Empire trilogy. The first book is called Heir to the Empire. The second is Dark Force Rising. And the last is called The Last Command. And the crux of these novels is that they were intended to be the sequels to Return of the Jedi. So it is a full trilogy of stories revolving around our original cast of characters. So Luke, Leia, Han, Chewie, Lando, in the formation of the New Republic, and ultimately what the plot revolves around a rise in leftover elements of the Empire that have collected in the farther regions of the galaxy, including an entire fleet of starships that were amassed by the Emperor, and they are led by a character who became a fan favorite and ultimately then became canon, as you mentioned, through Rebels, named Grand Admiral Thrawn. And Thrawn is a master tactician who was among the highest ranking officials in the Empire, and one of the greatest lines in Heir to the Empire in characterizing Grand Admiral Thrawn is that there was a wide belief among the Empire that if Thrawn had been on the bridge of the Executor instead of Darth Vader, there is no way that the Empire would have ever lost the Battle of Endor. He is a master strategist who is able to deeply understand his enemies by understanding their culture, by understanding their art, by respecting them as something other than just blaster fodder. And so what is incredibly interesting about him as a character is that he is both cold, calculating, and strategic, but at the same time, deeply empathetic to his enemies. And we saw throughout the entire series of Rebels how he was always seemingly one step ahead of the Rebels. And so what is interesting and exciting here for those of us who were big fans of the Zahn trilogy is how much of these Legends novels are now going to be somewhat reimagined through Ahsoka, in terms of Ahsoka literally saying, Thrawn is looking to return as the heir to the Empire. So how much of that original plot line are they somehow going to reimagine through what we now know as the Star Wars canon with these characters who we have, not necessarily with Han, Luke, and Leia at the forefront of this adventure, although I would love to see Luke reappear at some point down the line. That's where this is all coming from, and I think that over the course of this series, we're going to continually be looking, and the really kind of deep nerds on this are going to be looking to see where are they pulling from that original Zahn source material, where are they going new, and how well do they fulfill it? Because those 3 books, strongly recommend reading them. They're extremely well written. They're very well thought through. New characters as well as the old. That trilogy, for those of us until we got the sequel trilogy now, it's as good, and I would say in some ways is better than the sequel trilogy that we got in real life.
Mark Valentine.
So you're not for sure it's better? Like, well, are these books better than the sequel trilogy we got? Or in your opinion?
Well, I mean, look, I love Rey.
Yeah.
I love Kylo Ren. I love a lot of the twists and turns that happened over the course of the trilogy, but by the same token, what was great about the Thrawn trilogy, and where you might argue that it was better, is it deepens on the lore and it gives us more of our original characters who we would have liked to have seen grown. Like one of the first scenes in Heir to the Empire is Luke severing ties with Ben Kenobi because Ben Kenobi is now losing his strength in the Force and Luke's going to be on his own forever. It's such a wonderful emotional scene. There's a whole building outward of Leia and Han and their budding relationship, and ultimately the twins that they have. And that's actually, you mentioned Jason Sandula earlier. That's a throwback because Jason is actually in the Timothy Zahn books and a lot of that extended Legends canon. Jason is one of Leia and Han's twins. They have twin Force sensitive children named Jason and Jaina. They are really interesting. The character who some of you may have heard of, named Mara Jade, who is known as the Emperor's Hand. She was an assassin of the Emperor who plays an extremely big role in this trilogy, and ultimately ends up becoming a love interest to Luke Skywalker. They start as adversaries, they become lovers. That's an incredibly cool story. And then there's the totally whacked out story of Joruus C'baoth, the clone Jedi, who is enlisted by Thrawn to be his number one soldier, as well as the clone Luke Skywalker that Luke has to battle in the last episode of that trilogy, who's been cloned from his hand that was chopped off on Bespin. Like, it's so wacky, and yet when you're reading it, it's so wonderful that I love the characters of the new trilogy, but boy, those books would have been really fun if they were movies.
Luke, L-U-U-K. Yeah, no,
Luke.
I'm all in on Mara Jade. Like, I need Mara Jade to show up. I would venture to say we are going to get Luke Skywalker. I think you put Ahsoka with Luke Skywalker in the Book of Boba Fett for a reason. If nothing else, I now know that Ahsoka knows that Darth Vader was redeemed, which is super important to me. So when getting back to Ahsoka, like that's super important. But yeah, like, Mark, you've read these books as well. Do you wish this had been the sequel trilogy we got rather than the sequel trilogy we did get?
It's been a really long time since I dove into the Heir to an Empire book. On a separate note, I do want to bring this up, guys. I asked you this in our group chat, our Star Wars group chat the other day, and there's a Filoni interview. I think it was from like 2 or 3 years ago, but Filoni was basically saying that he and George Lucas had expressly said canonical Star Wars is solely movies and TV shows. And the books like Heir to an Empire and all of the novelizations, and
or even the novelizations that they say count now.
Correct. But even the stuff that in the past that George signed off on to allow to happen, like the Chewbacca death in New Jedi Order, all of that stuff, when George was still at the helm of Lucasfilm, the books had to get the signature of George Lucas to do anything. That George had overwrite on the books. And eventually, what would wind up happening when there was the sale over to Disney, and Lucasfilm was transferred from George Lucas over to Disney. What Disney did was they took all of these books and they took them from even the ones that were considered quote unquote canon. They decanonized all of these books and made them legends, much to the chagrin of the readers who had invested time, energy, and attention. Like Mike just said to you, there's a lot of people that feel that way about Heir to an Empire. They think that it was a much better successor and should have been the working source material moving forward with the Star Wars universe. They did not. But what's interesting about that interview with the Star Wars podcast is that Filoni says whenever he considers bringing something in to canon, i.e. these shows, they first go to, he and I'm assuming his executive producers and his writing team go to the legends to see, has it already been created? Now, why would I bring that up? I think wholeheartedly that interview, which is resurfacing again, is kind of prepping the landing for, we can expect a lot of these things to become canonical. Even though they were decanonized, a lot of these things we can expect to sort of be fan service in a really good way. So I do think that for the fans of that extended universe, I think you guys are going to be rewarded with a lot of stuff from Heir to an Empire. They have not given you the name of Dave Filoni's Star Wars film. I would be shocked if by the end of this series, we don't learn that title. And I would be doubly shocked if that title is not called Heir to an Empire.
Yeah, I totally agree. I will say that Thrawn will come to a more ceremonial end than he does in the books as well. If for no other reason, the person who ends him in the books is no longer with us after the events of Rebels. And I will leave that at that in case you do want to go read those books. We'll be back with more about Grand Admiral Thrawn and our preparation for Ahsoka after a moment from these sponsors.
Is Disney World home to you? Realtor Victor Naraki can help make it a reality. Realtor Victor Naraki specializes in making your Disney home dreams come true. Second homes, investment home, retirement, relocation. With Victor's input, he will show you the home opportunities that you don't get to see as a tourist. Imagine being at the park in minutes, walking around the World Showcase for daily exercise, watching the fireworks in your own backyard, or having Disney Springs as your local mall. Have you ever heard of Windermere, Winter Garden, Horizon West, Dr. Phillips, Claremont, Lake Nona, or Disney's own Celebration and Golden Oak? Victor can introduce you to these communities, which are just minutes to the magic. Stop imagining a Disney life and start living your dream today. Call Victor at 407-340-9375. And don't forget to mention that you heard all about Victor here on Shipping Company Podcast Network. Head over to DisneyAtYourDoorstep.com and start living your magical life today.
But let's talk about Thrawn in Rebels and Thrawn, who we can expect to see in this show. Played by Lars Mikkelsen, who was the voice actor as well.
Range, sir. Hold your fire. They've earned their victory today.
The rebels are getting away!
Oh, not to worry, Captain. I've found this whole experience to be very enlightening.
Mark Adams, I'm going to come to you. This was your first introduction to Thrawn, his blue skin, his red eyes. Contrary to popular belief, not force sensitive, so keep that in mind as well. He is not a Darth Vader level character. But Mark, what did you make of Thrawn and where he ended up at the end of Rebels?
I thought his character was great. I was worried when everyone kept bringing up Tom Hiddleston to play him. And
Bill Hader would have been awesome. Would have been really cool.
I was like, oh my God, is he like a Loki type character? I hope not. So I didn't really have any idea who he was. But I looked at him as a better Lex Luthor. Being, like a DC guy, that's how I saw him, was smart, calculating, playing chess while others play checkers. But he didn't monologue. He didn't catch himself monologuing. People didn't take advantage of it. He was smart about it. I liked the one clip in the show where, they go to his office. I apologize for not having the character names down pat, but he's in there battling his droids. his combat droids off to the side, and you just see he's not just a thinker, he's not just a talker. He'll put some foot to robot. And then the door closes. It's like, oh God, we just saw a peek behind the curtain. So I really liked him. I think what I liked most about him, Kylo Ren, great character, but had remnants of Darth Vader. I've seen it before. Darth Maul, really cool, but still slightly. I've seen this before. Admiral, is it Admiral? General?
Grand Admiral.
Grand Admiral.
Grand Admiral.
Thrawn. I just liked how fresh and different he was for a Star Wars villain. He wasn't some guy in a cloak. He was fresh.
Pepe the Prawn needs to play Grand Admiral Prawn in a spinoff. So let's talk about.
He's in terms of the Empire, okay?
Thrawn and Rebels. He gets taken away by Ezra. We don't know where they go. Pelion is his right-hand man. We see Pelion show up in episode 7 of season 3 of The Mandalorian, where we have Hux's dad. We have all that kind of stuff. Really, the Empire acting in shadows. They have to act like they're not working together, when in reality they're doing exactly what the Rebellion did throughout Rebels, where they have all these different sects and they're all going to come together and under one person. Supposedly it's going to be Thrawn. It probably will be. We do know that multiple people are working under him. I'm trying to remember her name. I know she's Bruce Lee's goddaughter. We saw her in season 2 of episode 5, where Ahsoka said, "Where is Grand Admiral Thrawn?" We know her character is returning for this show. There's a lot of different places it can go. All I know is I'm very happy Lars Mikkelsen is playing that role, and I'm excited to see where it goes. Mike, do you have any predictions what we get from Grand Admiral Thrawn? Other than what Mark said earlier, we really expect this to end in a Heir to the Empire film directed by Dave Filoni.
Yeah, I think he is going to set everything totally upside down. I would not be shocked if this season ends on a bit of a downer. Could be a downer, could be a cliffhanger. I hope that they don't just use it as a setup for the movie. I hope we do get a full arc out of it for Ahsoka. But given what we know about Filoni pulling together some sort of Avengers style, end game for all of the live action Mandoverse things that we've seen, I would not be surprised to see him come out at the end of this in some sort of interesting position of power, which I think would be exciting. I think that what's really nice there, where we do get a best of all worlds, as Mark was saying, and getting that fan service is, it's 30 years between the Battle of Endor and the events of The Force Awakens. So we have a whole lot of time to enjoy a huge threat to the New Republic that comes in the form of Thrawn. And I think getting to see this saga play out here is going to be great. And so I would like to see him put some of our characters in peril. I would like to see him somehow begin to pull together the initial threads of the First Order. What that ultimately is going to entail, I don't know. I think it's a really neat curveball that we're getting all of the characters from Rebels back in to help bring this story out.
But even before The Mandalorian debuted, like Jon Favreau said in the panel at Star Wars Celebration Chicago in 2019, that the story of The Mandalorian takes place 5 years after the Return of the Jedi. So Mike, to your point, we've got 25 years from the start of the Mandoverse up until The Force Awakens. And Jon Favreau said at that time, like, it's going to explain the rise of the First Order. Like, this universe is going to explain that. So that is what they're doing. Like, Thrawn is eventually going to... I don't think Jon Favreau to be enough of a quote-unquote fanboy to have had all this idea himself. I do believe this to be a lot of Favreau and Filoni working together. I think Favreau is going to be an executive producer on Ahsoka, but I don't think he's near as involved as Filoni. So that'll be interesting. But to your point, I think there's things that they're doing in The Mandalorian that they'll probably try and do some in Ahsoka, that The Rise of Skywalker really forced their hand, is trying to have to explain cloning and the rise of Palpatine, that I don't know if I'm totally in on. Like, I really don't have much of a choice. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I think what they're doing really well here, and where I think this naturally could lead to the dawn of the First Order, is that we've seen in The Mandalorian how inept the New Republic is.
Mm-hmm.
They've been dismantling their armies. They've fallen into bureaucracy. Things are in disarray. You can imagine that if Thrawn comes back and the entire galaxy gets thrown into war again, that there would be an entire section of the galaxy again that would say, you know what? We need a strong force to get behind, and that's how you get the rise of the strong man in Snoke, and you get the rise of the First Order, because that's the whole point of the First Order, is that they're saying, look, this is about law and order. They are the law and order government. So I think that they've actually done a really nice job of starting to build that runway in. So it's Filoni does it again. He is Filoni, the master of the filler content. So he took everything between prequels and original trilogy and through the Clone Wars, made it all make sense and made it better. And he's going to do it again. He's going to take, remember, it's really interesting, I think, and then I'll cede the floor again in a moment, but I was thinking about this the other day when prepping for this conversation, that, a lot of people, sometimes myself included, whined about unfulfilled promise of things that came in The Force Awakens. One of them being the Knights of Ren. Another one being, where did the First Order come from? You get these things, just one-off lines. And, now that they're starting to fill those stuff in, I'm saying, you know what? Maybe we should give JJ some grace, because there's one line in Star Wars A New Hope: I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. And we all just took it for granted until there was a series 30 years later that brought to life and movies 30 years later that brought to life what that is. And I'm excited now that, for as much as we can say that they're retconning or they're saving whatever happened in the sequel trilogy, maybe that's just the stories that were delightfully put out there for somebody else to pick up.
We're gonna go off of that here in just a minute, the retcon potential conversation, because I'm with you. I don't think that that's what's happening at all. I'm far more interested in the rise of Snoke than I am how they carried on the legacy of Palpatine, which actually kind of bums me out. But Mark, I saw you nodding along when he talked about the Knights of Ren. You think they're more than just a boy band, huh?
I mean, I'm sure there is a fan-made boy band out there. If the Harry Potter universe has taught us about fan-made bands. But yeah, I felt like that was disappointing. We get a flashback of them, and then they disappear, and then Kylo kind of takes them out. Are we ever going to get like a series of them? Have we had anything on them?
Nothing. Nope.
Shout out to Screen Rant. There's a or Screen Junkies. They all have the name Scream in them. There's an excellent podcast. There's an excellent podcast video, etc., on YouTube right now, where they actually are examining whether we may get the seedlings of the Knights of Ren in this series, and that perhaps those burnt orange force wielding folks that we see in the trailers may actually be somehow connected to those forces out in the unknown regions.
I just feel like there's a great story with them. I mean, besides a cool name, it's you got to do something with it.
Yeah, I hope so. Mark Valentine, anything else on Thrawn or anything else with the Rebels before we move on to probably one of the most important, at least speculated, episodes of Rebels?
No, let's get to the World Between Worlds. I mean, we've said a lot of great stuff already about them. I don't want to belabor the points already.
So the World Between Worlds is an episode. It's, I believe, the third to final episode of Star Wars Rebels, where it's this ambiguous world between worlds. There's a portal where Ezra actually enters it. He can see into events of the past. It's literally the entire reason Ahsoka is even alive, because during her battle against Darth Vader at the end of season 2, Ezra sees it, and he actually yanks her through the portal and prevents her from being killed by Darth Vader. She then enters back into this world and is able to walk out of this temple. There's a lot of speculation that, and Mike, I'll go to you for, or no, Mark Valentine, I'm going to go to you first on this, is the World Between Worlds is going to make an appearance within this show, and it's how they'll potentially retcon or change, basically endgame time travel this entire sequel trilogy and make it not count. While I don't believe that to be the case, do you expect the World Between Worlds, aka kind of the multiverse, to play a role in this show?
I think they're going to be very careful with the term retcon. I don't think that Lucasfilm is ever going to undo anything in the saga that we just saw. I think that makes them look really bad. What I do agree with is Mike's assessment that I think they're going to add elements, and I think Filoni's been doing this, that they're going to add elements that I think are just going to augment what we have and give it more explanation. I do like the idea of introducing a world without time to kind of explain how Ahsoka Tano lives from being 14 during the Clone Wars to, not really looking like super aged during The Mandalorian. And, maybe she spends a little time there. I don't know. And here's where I'm going to just kick it back to you guys. I have watched those episodes once, but I really don't know enough about the world between worlds to really speak on it all that much. So if we get it, am I excited for it? Absolutely. But I love when we add new aspects to the Force. I love building out this universe. So the more that they do that and the more fantastical they make it and that anything is possible, even time can be manipulated, I think that's pretty cool. So I would be in for something like wholly weird going on.
I'm not even sure they would necessarily do that because, like, timeline wise, Ahsoka would be in her mid 40s, which is what Rosario Dawson is. Like, I think she's aged the appropriate amount that I don't think she's not aged enough to where that necessarily would come into play. But Mark Adams, we've had multiple conversations about the multiverse and the MCU and stuff like that. Are you afraid of even that potential happening in Star Wars?
Yes.
Okay.
I hear all these phrases and I'm scared already because I think it's kind of part of the unraveling of the Marvel universe right now. So, oh God, we're not even going to bring up the DC universe unraveling because of it. So the world between worlds, season 4 was kind of the weaker of seasons for me. I thought that was cool. Do I need more of it? No, but does Dave Filoni have the power to make me realize, yes, you needed more of this to better understand it and appreciate it? He does, but I don't feel like I need more of it.
Mike, what do you think?
Please, no time travel. I really, really don't want time travel. Sure, there could be something fun. I agree with Mark. Sometimes you don't know what you want until somebody serves it to you. But I think that there's something really beautiful about this story being told as sequential and being told as something where actions have consequences and there's no going back to it. I think Marvel, the movies are working off of pre-existing material where they've already gone to it. But to Mark's point, like, we're dealing with multiverses and we're dealing with all sorts of weird postmodern stuff in all of these other genres. Like, keep Star Wars the way it is, in my opinion. I'm already uncomfortable with the world between worlds.
So in that episode of The World Between Worlds, there ultimately the decision is, hey, you can't actually do this. Like, Ezra has the ability to yank Kanan out of that portal the same way he did Ahsoka, and ultimately it saved Ahsoka's life. But Ezra then has this realization, like, hey, if I yank Kanan out of here, like, we're all gonna die because he literally sacrificed himself to save all of us. Ultimately, the lesson of The World Between Worlds is you can't change it. So if they're going to use that and kind of reach that point, if we're using The World Between Worlds for 45-year-old Ahsoka to make a connection with Clone Wars level Anakin Skywalker, like Snips and Sky Guy, the adventures of those two, and like having a face-to-face of a grown-up Ahsoka with Padawan Anakin Skywalker, like, I'm kind of here for that kind of stuff. But to your point, like, time travel and changing the events of the past or the events of the future, potentially not something that I want to see. We know Hayden Christensen is in this show. Does that happen through The World Between Worlds? Does that happen with him as a Force Ghost? That's my bet. I really don't know what's going to happen, but like, I'm super intrigued. But I guess to your point, the multiverse and different, the way things are playing out, they're not going to say the sequel trilogy doesn't count through the events of this show. To Mark Valentine's point, if that was the case, they wouldn't be continuing on with the story of Rey Skywalker in another film, which apparently has news that Yahya Abdul-Mateen has left that project, which I hope is untrue. I don't know
I didn't
how.
even know he was in it.
I don't even know. He was supposed to be kind of the main guy. But anyway, Jermaine Obaid-Chinoy, who did Miss Marvel, is helming that project. But with all these strikes going on, you can't really trust what's happening out there. But we have Ahsoka in The Mandalorian. She pops up in season 2, episode 5. We see her again in the Book of Boba Fett, just kind of being a consultant to Luke Skywalker, if nothing else. Like I said, it made my heart so happy to know that Ahsoka knows that Darth Vader was redeemed. Extremely important to me, and I think how Ahsoka is going to potentially try and make that connection with Anakin's Force Ghost. I think we've kind of covered who Ahsoka is, who these characters are. So, Mark, I want to go back to you, Mark Valentine. What is your wish list? 3 biggest things you want to see in Ahsoka as we wrap this up.
I'm excited for Grand Admiral Thrawn. I'm excited for seeing that material that we said, pulling all of this stuff together, and I'm excited to see this stuff mesh. I am wholly excited to see the crew of Rebels coming to live action. And I am like hoping and praying that this is the spin-off of much bigger projects for Hera and Sabine. I am so excited that we get a live action Chopper. And I really hope that this leads into a film. And I'm going to say it, guys. I'm sorry, I'm going to touch the third rail. I hope this is the beginning of the redemption for Lucasfilm. Because aside from Andor, I've been like a little underwhelmed with some of their latest stuff. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. Boo Obi-Wan series.
I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. No, look at the looks I'm getting from them. I know.
No. After watching Rebels, I actually like Obi-Wan's show even less. Is that a hot take?
I'm not pushing the button because I'm in charge of it, but Mike has a rebuttal.
Oh, okay.
We go back and listen to our words several months ago when we were all raving fanboying over the Obi-Wan series.
I never did.
I don't know.
There was another babysitting Star Wars show.
The rewatch value on it has been so good. There have been so many good moments in it. It got nominated for an Emmy as well as Andor did. I think
perfect.
I mean, look, Andor's in a league of its own relative to anything Star Wars and broader television, but I'm not on board with the retroactively pooping on Obi-Wan.
Bryan can vouch for it. I wasn't a fan of it while it was on.
Mark Adams, your wish list for Ahsoka.
Let's see. Grand Admiral Thrawn or King Prawn. I'm definitely excited to see him. Oh man, there's gonna be cosplayers, theme park. It's gonna be great. He's gonna be amazing. The Rebels crew. What's their ship called? The Ghost? Is that it?
Yep.
I'm excited for the crew. I'm excited for the Ghost. The Ghost is also climbing the ranks of my favorite Star Wars ships. Chopper, I can't wait to see you. And then I am excited to see some Ahsoka with 2 lightsaber action. I'm excited. I'm ready.
Mike.
I would very much like to see Anakin in whatever form we can get him. I think that's going to be exciting. I'm excited for whatever these dark side of the Force wielding non-Sith characters are, especially with the late Ray Stevenson. I think he's a fantastic actor, and I'm really excited for whatever they're going to bring to bear. And then it's finally the real Thrawn. He's really here. I have no idea what they're going to do with him. I hope it's not one of those things where we end up waiting 7 out of 8 episodes before we get to him. I hope he plays a pivotal role, and I'm excited and hoping that I'm going to throw in a fourth one. I mentioned it earlier. I want a real story and real stakes for Ahsoka. I don't want it to just kind of feel episodic. I want it to feel like she gets a really full due on this, and that we really see something big change and see the role that she's playing in this broader narrative of what gets us from the dawn of the New Republic to the dawn of the First Order.
My wish list, I want Dave Filoni to do Dave Filoni things. There's a lot within Clone Wars and Rebels that is really freaking nerdy, and I love every minute of it, but it's not for the casual audience. So I want Dave Filoni to do Dave Filoni things, and I want people to accept him for it. I want Freddie Prinze Jr.'s at least voice to make an appearance. I want Kanan Jarrus to have an effect on this series. And 3, Ahsoka, as I said earlier, is my favorite Star Wars character. This show is titled Ahsoka. I do not want it to become about everybody but her. I want her to remain the central focus and for her to have the biggest arc of the entire show, even if that ultimately ends in her demise.
Bryan, you brought up Freddie Prinze Jr., and I think it'd be a great time for Random Rushmore.
The game where everything's made up and the points don't matter.
For everyone playing at home, Bryan's really smart, my guy in the chair who has an answer for everything. If it's right all the time, I don't know. I just go with it because he's smart. But I like to trip him up. He's brought up Freddie Prinze Jr., so I want to know everybody's Random Rushmore of Freddie Prinze Jr. movies.
Can anyone on this call actually name 4 Freddie Prinze Jr. movies?
How dare you? How dare you?
Scooby-Doo.
Yeah.
What was Summer Catch? That one with Jessica Biel? The baseball one?
That's on mine. She's All That, number 3.
She's All That.
Oh,
and
I know what you did last summer.
That's my 4.
Yeah.
If it's live action appearances, yeah. If not, like I will absolutely choose him as Kanan in Rebels.
You can do that. I just said you know what? I'll just limit. Instead of movies, I'll do. Give me your 4 top Freddie Prinze Jr.
Yeah. Okay. Rebels, Summer Catch, She's All That, and Scooby-Doo. I know what you did last summer.
I know what you did last summer. You got come on.
Hey man. Anybody have anything different?
No, that's mine. I'm taking your yes, that's me too.
He was in an episode of 24.
I'm scrolling his IMDb. Well, I'll throw one more out there. He's great in The House of Yes. I'm gonna bring out like a really
wow.
I'm gonna bring out a deep indie film cut.
Nope, Mark. He's the man.
Him and Parker Posey.
Friends.
I was about to say shout out on Friends. He's the helpful Manny to disgruntled Ross.
I will also give him a shout out. Although he was rarely on screen talent. He was on the writing staff for World Wrestling Entertainment at WWE for a couple of years. And if you go and listen to some of his podcasts from when he was writing for WWE, it's really fascinating stuff. Like, I may have joked about how many films we all know from Freddie, but that's because a lot of the stuff that he's done, since he's
an acclaimed chef.
He's done a lot of voiceover and a lot of directing and a lot of producing. So a lot of his work has been behind the scenes. So when I asked if we knew of 4 big Freddie things, that's not a knock. He's built his career doing all this other stuff.
And he's married to Buffy. He's got a TikTok. He's got a TikTok of him talking about the Force being for kids and Star Wars being for kids that he talked about. That's going to make the rounds as Ahsoka gets closer, I feel like, because that one, like, he goes off. It's full of expletives and all kinds of stuff, but he's a Star Wars nerd to his core.
Thank you all for playing this Random Rushmore. Bryan, you definitely brought your A game.
Thank you. I think
P.S. guys, I looked it up. It is neither Screen Junkies nor Screen Rant. It is Screen Crush. If you want to see how they have a very good theory video of how Ahsoka will connect to the Knights of Ren.
I think we've covered it. So Mark Adams, I will turn it back to you for the end of the show.
Jedi Masters, Sith Lords, whatever you identify when it comes to the Force, thank you for being here. I appreciate you for taking this Padawan under your robe. No, that's right.
No.
For taking me by the lights. No. I don't know where to go with this. Thank you for having me be the droid you're looking for. I don't know.
That's bad.
But anyways, move along. Gentlemen, please tell our listeners how they can stay up to date on everything fun that you're doing, because I'm sure you made more fans out there.
Lisa identify as a Gungan.
Oh.
Determined by the gods, it is.
Give me your redemption story, Jar Jar.
You can catch me and Jar Jar Binks on Diz Life Podcast every single Monday here on the Chip and Company Podcast Network. Thanks for letting me hang out and talk Star Wars, guys. I appreciate you.
Thanks for having me back. You can hear me as well as Mark and Bryan on Babu's Frikin podcast anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcasts. It's been a long-term hiatus, so you're going to get a number of series up until this one. Hopefully we'll be coming back with more new content sometime soon.
And you can follow United We Fan on Instagram at UnitedWeFan_podcast. Go and vote for Scarface.
Scarface.
Mike, is Scarface overrated or properly rated?
Yes, friends, help us settle this. Or I put up the option up there of not seen it, and that's actually doing really well. A lot of people have not seen Scarface.
Mike, what's your opinion on Scarface?
I think it's amazing.
Yeah. My man.
Boo. Mark?
Scarface is way overrated.
Thank you.
It's a cult. It's cult-like. I mean, is it good? Yes, but
Yes,
people turn it into like
burn it down,
greatest thing ever, and it's not. It's got a great line, but I mean, that was the beginning of, like the Nicolas Cage, good or bad. It's like Al Pacino, good or bad.
You really are in the middle of a Community rewatch, aren't you?
Oh, I'm a cat. I'm a sexy cat.
Yeah, Scarface is where you start to say to yourself, like, this is where Al started to lose his frickin' mind. That was it.
Well, thank you, listeners, for uniting with us. United We Fan, the podcast on the Chip and Company podcast. As Bryan mentioned, follow us. Stay up to date on everything United We Fan on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter/X. Till we unite again, fans, remember, your Schwartz is as big as mine.
You're stuck with me, Sky Guy.
What did you just call me? Don't get snippy with me, little one.